gotta do. I'm a little ahead of schedule, buddy.
Sorry.
I know I told you 7:36 and it's 7:33. I'll take my time introducing you. All right, so next month's speaker, by the way, is going to be a gentleman by the name of David Stokes. David is the Director of Municipal Policy at the Show Me Institute. So he will be one of our outside of Jefferson County people coming in to speak, hopefully share some unique insight, something that we don't hear very much of. So make sure you invite your friends out if you want to hear about that. We'll have a little bit of information on him on the Facebook page coming out, so keep your eyes out there too. So as I said, our speaker today is Mr. Bob Boyer. Bob was first elected as the assessor back in 2016. He is a lifelong Jefferson County resident. He graduated from baseball state champion Vestas High School.
Class of 2000.
And then Jefferson College as well, so stayed local. He does appear to be qualified for his position because he did serve as a licensed land surveyor for 15 years as well, right? So legally speaking, he knows what he's looking at. All right, so Bob, if you wouldn't mind working your way up here, we need to get this presentation. Your computer closed at some point. I'm going to blame John for that.
That's all right.
Everyone, please give Bob a round of applause. Welcome.
So while I set this up, Mark Paul has agreed to sing to you for a few minutes.
No. I could try. Oh, Bob Boyer. All right, that was enough.
Man, that was great. Everything was shut down on me.
Took too long.
Keep singing, Mark. There we go.
Okay, I'm going to scoot this over
I can actually slide this.
so everyone can see what you got going on.
Well, good evening. How's everybody?
Well,
So you said my name's Bob Boyer, Jefferson County Assessor. Assessor for 6 years. I also served on the county council representing up here in the Arnold area from 2011 to 2017. Also, I am a licensed professional land surveyor, but I'm also a state licensed real estate appraiser as well. So I wanted to talk to you a little bit tonight about my office, what we do, a little bit about the money we've saved, and a little bit about the history of property taxes, particularly the levies and how they're set. 'Cause I think it's pretty important information, especially considering what's coming up in the August ballot up here with Fox School District. So the mission of the County Assessor's Office is the duty to accurately and timely prepare the annual assessment roll in accordance with Missouri Constitution, state statutes, and the principles and practices of mass appraisal. We value all property fairly and equitably. The vision statement we have is to find, index, and fairly value all real and personal property and to provide the best customer service in county government. And I'm confident in saying that we do provide the best customer service in county government. My office has 32 full-time employees. We have 3 divisions: real estate, personal property, and mapping/GIS. My office is governed by the Missouri Constitution, specifically Article 10, the revised statutes of Missouri. You can find it in Section 53 and Chapter 137. And then there's also Code of State Regulations, 12 CSR 30-02. So we have a lot of innovation that we have to do every year to try to keep up with saving money and making the office more modern. I try to make the office more modern every single year. I'm excited to talk about e-filing. So when I first got in the office, you could only, if you had no changes whatsoever, you could click a button and file. But if you had changes, you had to send in a paper form. And it was costing a lot of money, about $70,000 using postage. So we worked with our software vendor to implement full-fledged e-filing for personal property. And this year, I'm happy to report we have over 40,000 people who have used that option out of the county. We have about 100,000 accounts. We also rolled out a new program. The state legislature changed the law where they allowed county assessors to do electronic assessment lists as opposed to a paper one. In the past, I had to mail you a piece of paper. If you didn't return it, I had to mail you another piece of paper. Well, 10,000 people this year opted in to receive it electronically. We're going to roll a full-fledged opt-in program out later on this year for all county residents. We just did a test run this year with current e-filers. So hopefully that number will be significantly higher. The reason that's important is it costs about 55 cents per piece to print it, stuff it, mail it. So you can see the savings. We estimate about 27,000 a year in budgetary savings when we do this electronic filing and opt-in program. Also, my budget is about $2.4 million a year. Most of that is salaries and benefits. We have 32 employees. So I can't really control a lot of that expense, especially when, they do the merit raises or the cost of living adjustments, things like that the county council passes and the county executive signs. Not saying they don't deserve it, they definitely do. But I can't control those expenses. What I can control is the things like the paper, the pens, the ink, things of that nature. We have last year we had about $500,000 in non-employee expenses budgeted. Well, we actually spent those about $428,000. So we saved about $72,000 or 14% throughout the year based on our budgetary number. And that's kind of what the conservative principles do. We try to do more with less. And I'm proud to say that every year we have a similar process that saved that type of money every year. And what we do with that money is pretty impressive too. We're able to invest in Jefferson County government. For one thing is we overhauled our county GIS property viewer. How many of you guys have seen the property viewer online? If you haven't, you need to check it out. It's pretty cool. We try to do a lot of things on there. I try to give as much information to the public as I can, so I don't want them to come to Hillsborough or come down to my office. Not that I love you guys, but you don't need to drive to Hillsborough every day. So we try to put as much information as we can on the county website. We also are able to purchase servers for the GIS and the DevNet software that the assessors and collectors office use. Try to make it more efficient for the taxpayers that have to show up to Hillsborough to get them in and out the door as fast as possible. We also fly the county every 2 years with aerial imagery, and we do a cost-sharing model with other county departments, cities, water districts, things like that, and they all use the information a little bit differently, but we're able to cost share and provide that service for other county taxing entities as well. So just give you a little overview of what property is taxable. We got two categories. You got personal property and you got real property. And the split on it, real estate or real property is about 79% of the overall assessed valuation of the county. Personal property is about 21%. So when they talk about eliminating personal property, keep in mind, you're only talking about a small share of the overall property tax burden that they're talking about. Real property defined by section 137.10. It's a kind of a wordy thing, but basically what it means is the land and anything affixed to the land. Your house, your deck, your garage, things of that nature is real property and valued as based on the use of it. There's three different categories in Missouri statute. We got agricultural land, residential, which is defined as property used for residential living of human occupants. They had to define that pretty strategically there. And then commercial is basically all of the property. It's kind of a catch-all. If you don't live in it, you don't farm it, it's probably valued as commercial. So you pay a percentage of your market value as an assessed value in Missouri. And in Missouri, the rates are for agricultural, you pay a 12% assessed valuation. Residential is at 19%, and commercial is at 32%. Now, agricultural is a little bit different. That if you produce a crop or you produce cattle, you get what they call productivity values, which is much lower than what the market value is per acre for that land. And that's all kind of driven by outstate Missouri that has tons of acres of farmland. Jefferson County has a lot, but not as much as some other counties. Last year we had $3.16 billion in assessed valuation for real property. The lion's share, 75% of that was residential. You had a small amount of that was railroad utilities. About 18% was commercial properties. And then you have a small sliver, like I said, 0.3% was actually agricultural value. And a lot of that's because of those productivity values being so low compared to the other market values. So personal property is a big long definition. Basically includes every tangible thing being the subject of ownership or part ownership, whether inanimate or inanimate, other than money and not forming part or parcel of real property is here and defined. A lawyer probably wrote that. but does not include household goods, furnitures, wearing apparel, or articles of personal use and adornment as defined by the State Tax Commission, owned and used by a person in his home or dwelling place. So that got added, that last part that's highlighted there got added about 1980s, because you used to have to file on your TV, your table, your chairs, your appliances, everything else. And we actually got some assessment forms from the 70s and early 80s that show those items. And I just can't even imagine filing on my TV today. But that got changed about the 80s. So in personal property, similar assessment levels, you got motor vehicles and business personal property are 33 1/3% of the market value. So pollution control equipment, it's kind of like those big factories or whatever, they get taxed at 25% of the market value. Livestock, farm equipment, farm machinery, the same agricultural rate of 12%. And if you guys have a historic vehicle or an old airplane, historic vehicles being 25 years older and they get classified with the plates, or an old airplane, it has to be so many miles or so many hours of flying, things like that, you can actually get 5% of the market value on those. So personal property is about $930 million last year. Just highlight some of the numbers. We have 244,000 vehicles in Jefferson County, 7,861 business personal property accounts. That's about, not all the businesses, because some of them are pretty small, but that's a pretty accurate number on the number of businesses in Jefferson County. We have the mobile home capital of Missouri with over 8,000 mobile homes. Some numbers, 95 beehives, 15 alpacas, and 3 llamas. Now listen, if you're one of the ones that filed your beehive, God bless you. I'm not checking it. If they don't get on there next year, I ain't coming out in my suit on and check. Just one of those things. Personal property, especially vehicles, we have a certain methodology we have to use to value them. So it's based on the October trade-in value from the National Automotive Dealers Association Used Car Guide, or its successor publication, which is J.D. Power and Associates. So we have to use that October trade-in value from the previous year to value vehicles, which in most years said, hey, the value's going to go down. Well, the past couple of years haven't been most years. We had to take a stance last year in Jefferson County. We didn't have good guidance from the State Tax Commission. The legislature, there's some people in the room, no fault of their own, but the legislature didn't pass any kind of relief. So we held our values for last year on personal property for vehicles. And, we didn't want this big up and down kind of roller coaster with values, because it's not good for the taxpayer, it's not good for the taxing districts. And we'll talk about levies here in a minute and we'll explain why. But that's how vehicles are valued per statute, and really don't have any really leeway on it. Unless you have a salvage title or, some other major thing that happens, I don't really have a lot of leeway to, value it any differently. So total taxable property, a few trends. Back in 2018, the total assessed valuation of the county was $3.349 billion. We've grown 22.3% in the last 4 years. We're over $4 billion right now in assessed valuation. We're the second fastest growing county in the state. We have been for a while. St. Charles is the first. Right now, we're still the 6th largest county by assessed valuation, and that's how counties are classified, whether it's first class, second class, third class, is based on your assessed valuation. So Jefferson County is growing, and that's a testament to Republican leadership in this room. That's a testament to the good market factors that we have here. People want to flee the high crime and the high taxes of St. Louis City, St. Louis County. They want to come somewhere, and they're picking Jefferson County. The little history of property taxes in here in Jefferson County. So back in 1979, there was a Supreme Court case out of St. Louis County that said St. Louis County is not assessing things the proper way. They're not uniform how they do it, and they're in violation of the Missouri Constitution. So the judge at the time said, we're going to do a statewide reassessment over all 115 counties. So all 115 counties had to basically remeasure everything, reappraise everything. And that work got completed in about 1985. Supreme Court mandated that reassessment. So if you look at my records and you ask for, hey Bob, do I have any records, for my property? My records go back to about 1985 when Ron Doherty was the assessor back then. That's really where they start. So if you have I don't have anything much older than that typically. So in 1980, the voters approved something called Amendment 5, which is commonly known as the Hancock Amendment 55 to 45 to the Missouri Constitution. Mel Hancock proposed that. It does basically 3 main things that, we all kind of know them, All local taxes have to be approved by the voters, especially if it's new tax that's going to ballot. The state can't reduce support for local government functions or force local governments to take on new duties without providing the funds necessary for the task. That's a big thing, especially when we talk about eliminating personal property. There's a big issue with that from the Missouri Constitution. The one I really want to focus on tonight, though, is property tax rates must be adjusted to avoid windfall revenues from rapid increases in assessed valuation. And basically, it's called the rollback provision in the Hancock Amendment. It's codified in section 137.073, which is about 3 pages long. If you have insomnia and you want to fall asleep at night, you can read that. It's a pretty good one. But the one part I want to highlight is in section 2 of that. It says the inflationary growth factor for any subclass of real property or personal property shall be limited to the actual assessment growth in such subclass or class, inclusive of new construction and improvements, but not to exceed the consumer price index or 5%, whichever is lower. So what that basically means is, in normal years, and we're not normal years, we got inflationary growth, unbelievable, we got a ton of fake money flooded the market, everything else. You know, CPI was like 1%, 2%, something like that. Well, now it's 7 and 8. I think it was 8.7 last year. So that's the issue, is the rollback was intended to limit the growth of these taxing districts' assessed valuation revenue by a little bit, not a lot. They have to work on a form through the state auditor's office, and it looks kind of similar to this. This is the one for the Fox School District. And basically, it's a huge formula that they have to follow, and it plays in a lot of factors. The assessed valuation from last year, the growth on a reassessment year, new construction improvements are excluded from that. Personal property increases are excluded from that. And I'm just not talking about if the value of vehicles go up, but people move to Jefferson County, so the total number of vehicles have gone up. So things like that. It's about 6 pages long. It looks like the IRS 1040 long form, if you want to look through it. It's very complicated, convoluted. I know we got a couple school board members in attendance tonight. I remember when I was on the county council, if you'd asked me to vet that in 3 days they gave us with information, it'd be almost impossible. Some of the CFOs and school districts don't even know how that formula works. And to be honest, some of the numbers on that formula don't match the numbers I certify. So there's a real problem with, and it's not necessarily the fault of the Board of Education or the school, the districts that certify this. It's kind of the issue of the form and the way it's processed. So this basically, if you calculate all this is what their debt or their tax levy ceilings become. And this is an issue with the Fox School District and other school districts. And if you look at this page here, you're going to see over here, it's kind of hard because it's not very clear. There we go. So you got 4 different levies here. Most districts have 2, an operating one and a debt service one. Only this one is subject to the rollback provisions of the Hancock Amendment, the incidentals. And DESE, who Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, that produces that, helps these districts make sure that if their overall levy is here and they have to roll it back per reassessment, if you got room in the debt service levy, they play a little game with the numbers to where the overall number isn't lowered, so they still get the amount of money that they were intending. You can see right there, there's 4 different levies: teachers, capital projects, and then debt service. The game also gets played is when you see those elections that come up and they tell you, hey, can you increase our debt service levy by 15 cents or 20 cents to, raise that up? Yeah, go ahead, Joe. Okay, 5 more minutes, go. All right, so that's the game that gets played. And there's really not a relief for that in statute to fix that problem. And they know it, and they play that game with it. So the issue that comes into is my assessed valuations, I have to be within 90% of actual market value. I'm studied by the State Tax Commission every year. I'm certified by the commission whether our values are in line or not, in compliance. It's a huge statistical study that gets done. So if I have to raise the values of a district to get within compliance, and that rate isn't rolled back to the CPI or 5%, whatever is lower, based on that formula playing with the debt service and the operating levy, you, the taxpayer, are paying more money. I've done my part as the assessor. The districts haven't necessarily done their part, and that's a real problem. And that's the issue we're running into with a lot of these districts. And then on top of that, you have districts that want to ask for a large tax increase And if the assessed valuation raised, there's no relief for the taxpayer, which was intended under the Hancock Amendment for, property taxes. So there's a problem. So the property tax system needs to be reformed. I think it does. I think most people agree. So what kind of reform can we have? Reform's not a bad word. It's been reformed in the past, just like I talked about with the personal property, where you have to file on your tables and your TVs. Now it's just your vehicles. That's a type of reform. There's a big push on elimination of personal property. That's one way. Property taxes versus, say, sales and use taxes. I know the Rock Township Ambulance District and the City of Arnold gave away part of their property tax levy to go to more of a sales tax model. Because sales taxes grow every year. They typically go up. Even in flat years, when people would say, hey, the sales tax revenue is flat, 2% is still pretty good. 3% is good. When I was on the county council, sometimes it was 7 and 8. It was a really good year. But sales taxes go up, and people outside of the area pay those. So that's a good idea. What other ideas do you guys have? I'd like to hear them. And if you guys have any questions. So, yes, sir.
I do have a question. I know Senator Eigel was real big on elimination of the personal property tax. I served also 2 terms as a county commissioner, and I realized the amount of money that brings in a small, poor county. That's huge. What was the provision, or what's the plan to replace that money? Where is it, if it goes away, where's it coming from?
That's a good question.
Bob, real quick, before
Yeah.
you answer this question, if you wouldn't mind repeating the question, just so everybody can kind of rephrase the question so everybody can hear it.
So he asked about, I guess Senator Eigel has been pushing to eliminate personal property. I showed you, it's 21% of the overall assessed valuation. What is the plan to, replace that money? And when I went to Eigel's event, there really isn't. And he'll flat out admit it to you. What happens in most states, and this is something we got to really be careful of, is everybody, personal property taxes is kind of like, the one tax you see. You get a bill in the mail, and you see it, and you have to pay it, you have to write a check, go online, whatever, and it's right around Christmas time. So you have to make the choice. Do I buy gifts for my kids for Christmas? Do I pay, taxes to the school fire and ambulance district? That's why people are kind of upset. They don't get upset about the real estate tax bill because they don't see it. It goes into their escrow and their mortgage payment. And then by the time they actually realize that it went up, which may happen in August, it's down the road. It's the mortgage company or escrow company is giving them a letter saying, hey, your escrow is out of balance. It's December, not August. So they don't see it. So that's the issue with personal property taxes. It's so controversial because people see it. Now, what happens in most states is they voted in August or November to eliminate it. They pass a constitutional amendment, it's eliminated. They all do high fives and cheer. And then they all forget that they eliminated it. In April, they roll around and the real estate tax levy has gone up. If you think 92 cents is high, you should see Illinois. And that Illinois doesn't have personal property taxes. There is the issue and then also on top of that, they through executive action put a $150 or $200 plate fee for every time you renew your plates. That's the issue with eliminating personal properties. You got to find a way to, if your idea is to limit the amount of money that's going to government, because government is a gargantuan beast that the more money you give it, the more they're just going to spend it. There's other ways you can do it. I mean, bringing down the percentages is one way. But there's other ways than just eliminating it, because everybody forgets 6 months later that you eliminate it, and when because everybody loves their teachers, everybody loves their firemen. And when they go out there and they lobby and 10% of people show up for elections, then they're going to get that levy passed, and now you pay more in real estate taxes. Yes, sir.
Time for one more.
I have one exception to something that you said. Once your home is paid for, you're very much aware of what your real estate taxes are.
Hey, God bless you. I hope to be there one day. Believe me, I do. So.
All right, that wasn't a question, so we got time for one more. Anybody?
How often do you reassess the property taxes? I think mine's gone up like 3 years in a row.
Well, Jeff, we have an appraiser at your house every other day, but I mean, other than that, no, I'm just kidding. No, it's every odd year, so it's 2-year assessment cycle. So, and what we try to do is we don't try to do a blanket raise like they do in St. Louis and St. Charles County, St. Louis City. We try to stay in compliance. So, within 90% of market value. So, if I run my ratio study and I'm within 90% in a certain area or a certain market, I'm pretty happy with that. St. Charles County, they're up 25%. St. Louis County's up 20%. Boone County, I talked to that guy, he was up 13%, you know. Those are just really high numbers, and, you know, on top of the fact that these levies aren't getting rolled back, there's no relief for the property owner.
So how much is going up in Jefferson County?
I can't give you an exact number because it varies depending upon where you're at, because our job is to equalize. So in some markets, you know, the median in some markets is about 4.5%, some as high as 10, it really depends. But the problem is those values are so low, I have to try to raise them up to get within compliance. But I can't raise them up too much because I'm taxing grandma out of their home. So you gotta try and find the balance of trying to meet the statutory requirement, and at the same time, you know, not tax people to death. So I can't really give you a blanket, there's no blanket number for Jefferson County, it just depends on where you live. I'll tell you, if you're in a newer subdivision, the issue we have in newer subdivisions is when phase 1 came in 4 years ago, you may have paid $250,000 for that home. Now it's phase 4, the exact same home, the exact same size lot, the exact same features inside, $400,000, $450,000. That's where the inequity comes in. And that's why we have to try to balance those out. So some of those $250,000 home that would sell in the open market today for $400,000 and $450,000, we got to try to raise them up maybe 10% to get them into the same realm of compliance.
So sell your homes, because we also need inventory.
Yeah. True. So, hey, thank you guys. God bless you. It's an honor and privilege to serve you every day.